Happy Thursday to everybody. This is virtual Mr. Burknell coming to you from my office at my house, but recording this so that you know exactly what you're supposed to do today with Miss Bertolone in my absence. So you are in capable hands, but just so you know, I am not going to be here today or tomorrow because I am at this conference that you see right here, the Kansas Exemplary Educators Network conference is happening in Topeka. So while I'm gone, you're going to be doing some work, but it's the same as if I was there. I'm just going to do it kind of virtually in this way. So you're going to need your computer today. We're going to need you to be checked in and logged in and on board with what we're doing. And you're going to work together with some folks, but ultimately, we're all responsible for this learning. So let's talk about what you need to do. Your job today is to look a little bit deeper into this idea of media and bias and political ideology. And you're going to look a little bit more at that role of media in our political system, but really also want to look at how people view the media. To what degree do they trust the media? Which news outlets do they trust and not trust? And how does that inform the consumption of media as it relates to their ideology? And then there's a long term assignment that we're starting, the annotated media analysis bibliography, which I'm going to have you look at and start. And that idea is going to give us a chance to look at sources and bias and connections to what we've learned in the role that the media play. So we've got a lot of stuff to do, but let's buckle up and let's get started. We talked about this before, right? The basic assumption of a democracy is that the people are connected to the elected representatives and that the representatives are connected to us. But the question becomes, how do we reach them? If it presupposes that tight connection, how do we make sure that that connection exists? And the same is true when we look at this issue of direct contact. We don't have direct contact at most levels of government. And this option is definitely limited in its effectiveness. So we have to instead look at something else or look to another way to make that contact. And that really falls to the media. So we've talked about how do we connect and we use the media as a linkage institution. The politicians have their message, it gets filtered through the media, and they use that to reach the people, but it is mediated, it is filtered, it is deciphered, it is translated, and sometimes we lose stuff in translation. So what the politicians are trying to do and say might get lost in translation. In just the same way, it might get lost in translation as we connect through the media because of various different things, bias, corporate interests, or whatever. Then that is mediated, that message, to the politicians, which then also causes even more problems because that message isn't the same as the way it was originally delivered. Part of that mediated reality then becomes a challenge. When we have the media that acts as gatekeepers, it's like a funnel. You got all of this information that's coming at them, but they can only let some of it through. Well, that letting some of it through might lead us to not getting the full story or not getting the fair story or not getting that fair and balanced approach, because that gatekeeper function is important. They help us understand what is and what isn't news or important, but then we have to look at this idea of media bias. And if we have media bias on top of them choosing which stories to tell, now they're choosing the stories to tell and they're choosing how to tell it. And that becomes a definite difficulty. I will go to anybody and have this discussion. Fox News says that they're fair and balanced, but they're not. And that's not a bad thing. We just have to realize that they're not fair and balanced, nor are things like places like MSNBC. They counteract each other, but to claim that you're fair and balanced when there's inherent media bias in what you're talking about is disingenuous, and we have to be able to cut through that. The other thing we have to think about is corporate media. I'll talk a little bit about corporate media in another video that you're going to see. But then we get to this idea of PAC journalism. And PAC journalism also becomes dangerous because we go to the shiny thing. It's the shiny thing problem. Whatever shiny thing is happening over here, then everybody flocks to that. And you don't want to get scooped by your competitors, so you want to be there first. And so you want to get the best information the quickest and publish it the fastest, and then everybody swarms around that issue. But at the same time, we might miss the other stuff that's going on. And we just move from shiny thing to shiny thing to shiny thing, and that becomes a little bit dangerous in our system. The other kind of issue that becomes dangerous is what we call horse race journalism. You see this a lot during presidential campaigns or campaigns in general. They focus on the person that's ahead, and they focus on the person that's likely to win. Well, sometimes they get it wrong. And in the case of 2016's presidential election, they got it way wrong. Right? The media was all about focusing on the leader, Hillary Clinton, and the inevitability of her election, but they got it wrong. So instead of focusing on horse race journalism, where we look at the one who's leading in the primary or the general election or whatever, why don't we look at candidate positions and really do a more balanced approach in our media coverage? Well, that takes work. That doesn't sell advertising time. People change the channel. We want salacious details. We want horse race journalism, find the leader, follow the leader. And that becomes a challenge then for us in terms of getting the best information. What we really find is that they're competing for the audience. They're competing for advertising time. They're competing for demographics. So if you're the news organization that's fighting for viewers, are you going to challenge viewers' understanding? Are you going to say, hey, you got to really think about this? Or do you just give them information that confirms their erroneous expectations and stereotypes? Because that's what they do in cable news. That's what we call narrowcasting. You bring that media message to a narrow group of people and on a narrow issue so that you can keep telling that story and you can keep selling ad time and you can keep people coming back. They're going to keep coming back if you give them what they're asking for, not necessarily challenge them to think of new perspectives. That's the problem with media bias. That's the problem with narrowcasting, because it doesn't challenge us. It just affirms and confirms what we believe. So then what do we get? Well, do we get lengthy explanations of the complexity of politics, or do we just get visuals and sound bites? Do we get stories that show government at work or scandal and negativity? Do we get news that's enlightening, or do we get news that's entertaining? Do we get the event-driven, spontaneous news with good pictures, or do we get more substantive and deep political analysis? The news that we get is going to be sensational, it's superficial, it's controversial, it's salacious. It's what we want because we like what they're giving us. We like spectacle instead of substance. And to me, that becomes a little more dangerous when we're all about spectacle and not about the substance. So here's some examples. Think of it this way. This is not real, but let's just go with it. If you show a picture of President Obama drinking Pepsi, CNN might say Obama appeals to Pepsi fans, where Fox says Fox declares war on Coke. MSNBC says in about an hour we're going to have live coverage of Obama drinking the best cola, and all who disagree with us are racist. Whereas the international community and organizations and media might show 18 people killed in U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan. The fact that that might be the case, and it's made up, sure, but it illustrates the point. If this is the way our media operates, are we getting the full story? What's reported is suddenness, negativity, is all of these things, elite individuals, conflict, media readiness. We're ready to cover the hot stories, and they keep telling those stories over and over. It's blending of that content, it's quick coverage, it's accessibility. What we want are these things, but does that help us navigate the news and navigate the reality and help us connect as a linkage institution should to the political process? You look at placement, right? Time magazine in 2000, the cover story was about Tiger Woods and the struggles that Tiger Woods was going through. And this is at the same time as the Republican National Convention. The Republican National Convention that was nominating George W. Bush to run against Al Gore in 2000 was not covered until page 26. That talks about some bias here, and placement is a key part of it. Look at headlines, right? Iran vows enemies will not survive if they attack Iran's nuclear sites. So it's salacious, it's scary, it's what we want to read, and it's clickbait in some ways. Talk about word choice and tone. Same news magazine, two different parts of the coverage. Talking about Mitt Romney and the wimp factor. It's like those things are blinking. The word wimp is blinking with lights. Is he just too insecure to be president? And then later on, you get Newsweek and this picture of Obama looking so presidential and the light shining on him in a perfect way. And the headline says, "Why are Obama's critics so dumb?" Just even the headline itself drips of bias and a point of view gone beyond what we expect of the media. And this might be the most recent example of what we can think of. And if you think about it, it's Donald Trump get named Time Magazine's Man of the Year, and that's typical for someone who wins the election. But what isn't typical is the design elements, and you can notice it. Let me know when you see it. But this is well placed if you don't like Donald Trump, and more of the same if you see the media as someone who doesn't like Donald Trump. Because I don't know if you can see it, but they did a pretty interesting job of making those into devil horns. I'm going to say that that was a little bit of a subliminal message, maybe not from Time Magazine, perhaps from the designer of the cover for sure. So what's the solution? Well, maybe we need muckrakers. Maybe we need whistleblowers. Maybe we need watchdogs. Maybe we need more of that which we don't have anymore. But the fact is, you've got to know your source. That's your job. You've got to have many of those sources, not fake news. And the fake news meaning real fake news, not Donald Trump's version of fake news, those people who don't agree with him, but have many sources that are reputable. Compare versions. Go to allsides.com. It helps. Make up your own mind, but you've got to do it. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to see what you know about the news. I'm going to see what you know about our media. And I want to see what you know about current events. So let's get started with that.